Hey there everybody, thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'm going to be doing more of a flip-through than a review. This is a book that I found on my latest trip to 2nd and Charles. It's Harvey Kurtzman's Strange Adventures. This was put out in 1990 by Epic Comics, so the little adult label from Marvel. And they felt like it was time for Kurtzman to come back to comics and make fun of the late 80s, early 90s, and he's doing this in collaboration with a bunch of very famous artists, which is like when I picked this book up, I was holy crap, I've never heard of this. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this, but in 1990, I'm not even sure I'd started buying comics yet. Maybe 91. I was probably just buying the Ninja Turtles at this point. So this is a really cool find for me. Just to see Kurtzman collaborating with a lot of these artists. I mean, you just look at the names on here. You have Aragones, Moebius is in here, William Stout, Rick Geary, Dave Gibbons, and a couple other names I didn't recognize. But this is such a cool book, I figured I'd just flip through it for anyone who hasn't seen it. This is Art Spiegelman writing an introduction, just talking about how much Kurtzman impacted not only the medium, but our culture as well. What a genius he is. So that's a touching piece. Then you have a pinup here by Moebius. He didn't do a story, which is unfortunate that they didn't collaborate. But a pinup by Moebius, another like little preface by the editor of the project. And then you have like a comics preface or intro, little tribute again to the genius of Harvey Kurtzman, done by Robert Crumb. And Crumb just talking about how he still looks at Kurtzman is like, how does he do it? I'll never be any good. So that's cool. It's fun to see people who obviously like Kurtzman and Crumb and Spiegelman, who all are at the peak of their game, and they all obviously respect each other. It's cool to see them hanging out and talking about each other and enjoying each other's work. And then you get to the meat of the book, which is the collaboration. So the first one is Shmagegi of the Cavemen, and this is a collaboration with William Stout. You can tell that Kurtzman knows each artist pretty well, or is at least aware, or the editor maybe is aware of who would be good for what story. This is a perfect story for Stout. You got the dinosaurs and all the cave people, and it's a story about this guy here, Shmagegi, I guess, and he's created the club, and he's teaching people how to kill with the club, that this is more humane way to kill somebody than tossing them off the cliff, or tossing them into the volcano like they had been doing. So it's just funny stuff, it's pretty typical Kurtzman type of humor, satire, parody. But you just see the impact of that, and then they get some bazookas at some point, and I don't know. It's just funny little story. They're all funny little stories. I especially like at the end where he's coming in to kiss her, and he's been coming up with all these, crazy weapons and stuff. And she's like, what is this? What is this new thing you're doing? It's just plain kinky. Why don't you just drag me around like a normal person? Well, I like that. That's pretty funny. I've always kind of wondered where kissing came from. It struck me as an odd behavior, an odd tradition. You don't see a lot of other animals doing it in the way that we do. So I do wonder, like, the first time someone like straight up kissed someone else, if they're like, what are you doing, weirdo? And this kind of reminds me of Mark Russell's run on the Flintstones as well. Like, there's actually there's Fred Flintstone right here. There's some other characters in here as well. This is the character from the imp from Little Nemo, I noticed in there. There's some other people. I mean, most of these strips have other people hiding in it, because cartoonists really seem to like to do that, little Easter eggs in the background. But yeah, it reminds me kind of like Mark Russell. I wonder if he read this and influenced his run on Flintstones, because this scene especially reminds me of my favorite issue of Russell's run on Flintstones, which is the Adam and Steve episode, and they're like, oh, monogamy, what are you fucking perverts doing being monogamous? So that one's really funny to me. Then you get a collaboration, Captain Bleed, with Sergio Aragones, and of course with Aragones you can count on just the Where's Waldo packed full of all kinds of fun details. Really enjoy that. The rhythmic beats here. This kind of stuff you'll see at the end of the book. This is all 100% planned by Kurtzman, which is, he's well known for that, like architecting pretty carefully how the strips are going to go. you can see all his pencils in the back, and that's cool because you can flip back and forth and compare it to what's going on in the actual story. But Sergio Aragones on a pirate story, come on, you can't go better than that. I really like this sequence where they're doing the whole musketeer battle up the stairs, and then they just go up a straight ladder. That's pretty funny. That seems very, very Kurtzman Mad Magazine to me. And these all look like they're watercolored for the colors, which is kind of cool. Epic, you know, they're doing, I think this is probably that blue line coloring process. This one here, Orem, or Drums Along the Schmohawk. This is entirely by Kurtzman. So drawn and I believe colored, definitely lettered. This is a guy that runs around with 6 guns on his hips. So it's bowed his legs, not from riding the horse, but from having the 6 guns. I've got to admit that at this point in time, I like Kurtzman's layouts better than his finishes. The pencils that are in the back that have some sense of value and structure to them. This thin line with the colors isn't doing it for me. But that's probably partially because of my color blindness. I can tell that there's a lot of reds and greens, so I'm probably not noticing all of those kind of contrasts in here. But it's a little muddy from a value standpoint, so that's difficult for me. This one here, I really, really like the art in it. This is with an artist named Thomas Bunk, who I've never heard of before. I'm assuming he probably worked in the Mad Magazine illustration genre, hasn't done like straight comics, probably done more magazine comics. And I've never been a huge fan of Mad. I need to go back. After reading this, I'm like, oh man, I gotta try and find like digital copies of Mad and go back and re-explore that, because I really enjoyed this. And the New Yorker as well. I need to go back and explore those cartoonists more in depth. So someone like this, I'm sure Thomas Bunk is a huge name because the art's amazing, but just not someone I'm familiar with because it's not in the type of the stuff that I was reading. But this is a guy trying to get diagnosed as a vampire. I do think some of the cartooning in this is some of my favorite as well. Just these silly things like the straw on the neck is totally gross to me. Comparing the strips to the pencils in the back, this is also the one where the artist took the most license. They added so much to the layouts, and I think it was to the benefit. Like Kurtzman has the 2 characters just sitting there, and the artist put like the guy hanging upside down from the lamp. So I think there's extra visual jokes in here that are pretty sophisticated and pretty funny compared to what Kurtzman laid out. And that's strange to see because he's such a successful cartoonist in all of the other ones. To see someone up the ante on it is pretty impressive. But it kind of just descends into chaos here, and this whole house blows up and lights on fire. Then we have a collaboration with Rick Geary. I've never liked Rick Geary's style. It feels very stiff, and like he takes a Micron pen and goes back in like colors or something. It's kind of blobby, but it is a funny story where you've got like this dog that acts overly human, drives a car, puts on pants, knows kung fu. Part of the reason I had trouble with Mad is this type of like, it's like half satire, half parody, but I don't know. I mean, in Mad you get actual parodies, but I don't know, that just type of humor just never landed with me as much as some other types. I enjoy these, but I don't know that I was actually like cracking up, laughing out loud at any of these things. And I just never resonated with that type of humor. I know it makes sense to a lot of people. Also, a lot of it's so like specific to a time. Like even these, they said, oh, we're bringing Harvey back to like take on the 90s. You know, we've got vampire movies and werewolf movies and all of this stuff. But I don't know. It just, I guess that time-bound nature of it makes it a little bit harder to appreciate. I mean, these are just poking fun at genres in general. So you kind of get the idea, but it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just not my type of humor. Super Surfer here. This one's really cool. This is Dave Gibbons, and it's really fun to see Dave Gibbons flex his cartooning chops working over Kurtzman. I mean, here you get like a more standard Gibbons superhero approach. But on the Surfer character, you get a much more rubbery, exaggerated, cartoony approach to things. And it's really fun to see Gibbons working in that mode. The other thing with this one is Gibbons is like packing it absolutely chock full of Easter eggs in the background, especially this page here. You've got Marvel, DC characters. You've got the Wiz over here pulling his shirt open. You got Swamp Thing and Clayface hanging out. Ozymandias, Rorschach. So you got all the characters from Watchmen in there. A little fig leaf over Dr. Manhattan. Judge Dredd, the comedian, looks like he's arm wrestling with Nick Fury. So it's just, that's fun. There's a lot of Easter eggs in there. You got the Justice League complaining about how things used to be. Judge Dredd giving away an award. Some other superheroes back in here. So this, I think, was probably, this one and the Thomas Bunk one were my favorite ones in here in terms of the art. And then obviously with the Silver Surfer, it's just like a parody of something that's still a little more relevant to me. I don't know, like the Western parodies. Western seems so out of date to me. And then you have one more with Kurtzman and a longtime assistant, I guess, Sarah Downs. And this is just a little Halloween story. I really, really like this moment here where you've got the 5 panels against the 4, and that's just the sway of her like walking through the woods and the roundness of her butt bouncing back and forth. And that in the pencils is really, really funny as well. So you got a little Halloween horror story here. And this looks quite a bit like Kurtzman working on his own. I also think a lot of the drawing reminds me of, I think his name's Gahan Wilson, who's a cartoonist for the New Yorker. Some of those drawings remind me of his stuff, which I think is kind of like an ugly style. Not bad, it's just kind of intentionally ugly, I think. And then, as if that wasn't all cool enough, all of those collaborations, you get all of Kurtzman's layouts. This is basically his scripts come in super detailed layouts. And like I said, I actually think these are more finished in a sense than his finished pages because of the way that he uses the pencil to shade in. And the compositions, the pop of the value, like all the silhouette work and stuff that he does that makes his cartooning so great. Like right here, you put those in silhouettes and it's perfect sense. All this beautiful breakup of negative space, this beautiful rhythmic stuff he does with dividing the page. That, like right here where she's walking and you see the shadows on the butt bumping, that shows up better here than in the actual page. So I actually really, really like his thumbnails. They look more accomplished to me than, like even here, how he's handling the ships. They look more accomplished to me than his finished work. But you can see also how these are so great for someone else coming in. Like here's the Thomas Bunk. And like I said, it was really fun to flip back and forth and compare them. Because like here, you have kind of the standard cartoonist gag of the guy on the couch talking to the therapist, which is what Kurtzman's doing. And then Bunk made the wise decision to have the vampire hanging from a chandelier. So you can see how these are like just such a great starting point to kick off your own ideas from, but then you give it to a cartoonist like Bunk and they're gonna take it to the next level. And I think that's probably what Kurtzman enjoyed the most. I don't know, but I would imagine seeing someone else take your vision and up the ante had to be a hell of a lot of fun. And given that he spent so much of his time collaborating and that he'd find his favorite collaborators, I'd imagine that those are why he likes those people. He goes, oh man, you did me even one better. Rick Geary, here in the back, he's also talking about how much he knows about each artist. So here he's saying he's not really familiar with Rick Geary, but he says there's a certain neato quality that he has. Like he's killing himself in order to get that quality over quantity. And to me that seems kind of like a pot shot, but maybe that's just because I don't like Rick Geary's art. But it sounds like he's saying it's stiff and overworked, and he's going too slow and he needs to speed up, which is my sense of Rick Geary too. He's like too slow and precious, and so everything gets stiff. So I feel like that's kind of a pot shot. And then here he's saying he's not too familiar with Dave Gibbons either, but that apparently Dave Gibbons finished this really, really fast. I didn't know that Gibbons had a reputation for being fast, so I don't know if he has a reputation for being slow and that's a joke or what. But here you can see Kurtzman's layouts, and you can really see how Gibbons stuck to the cartoony, rubbery vibe of the poses, which is great. And here's that big spread, and it's fun to see, you know, how he really nailed this composition, but then plugged in all of those Easter eggs of his own. So that's really, really fun. Here you get the stout one. And then here Kurtzman's just showing his layouts for his own. And again, even on his own, I think I like the layouts better. The rhythms work better when, like right here, when they're a rhythm using value contrast rather, at least for me, because I don't know if I can see the colors, but this makes all his fantastic composition work better for me. So this was an awesome find. Sorry I already chucked the dust jacket for it. I know that's got to drive people crazy, but I don't like dust jackets. So if you haven't got a copy of this, it's a really great book, especially for fans of Kurtzman and how he works, and people who want to study his, like, you know, the basic mechanics of his cartooning. Like right here, all the silhouettes and negative space that he's doing, when you see it in thumbnails, it's just such a revelation how he's thinking and how he's working and how he's making his pages work. So if you haven't got this, I don't know, search around online, see if you can find it, visit your local used bookstores. It's a pretty cool little artifact. So thanks for checking it out with me. I hope you all can find a copy if you've not got one. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel, there's two ways that you can support us. One is through our Patreon. The money we get from that always helps us buy the new books that we're reviewing. And then also, the most important thing is to support Sean and what he's doing with Living the Line Publishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at some of the books that he's put out now. Centralia is an awesome, gorgeous comic by rising Dutch star Miel van de Peet. This is his first work. It's a really great sci-fi story. There's a world in the future where the sun has gotten so hot that people can't be on the ground, so they have to run around. There's a lot of conceits that go with that. You know, what is the world that looks like? And I think you can see by the art that Sean's description of this book as like a Moebius for young adults, a YA Moebius, is a really great description of this really gorgeous and like wild, wacky, fun book. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.